Hi, this is an introduction to blended learning. So this is a lesson that you as the facilitator would be doing in one of your first times meeting with your group. This is something that you could do to end that first meeting. So I would highly recommend that before you do this, you get to know them, they get to know you, they kind of get to know why you're the one telling them about blended learning. Maybe you've given them personal experiences about it. Um, I would also make sure that you get to know the school and their experience so that you know what they're thinking about, what's kind of coming into mind as they're going through. So the first slide, or slide 2, is a quote from Blended Learning Universe about the definition of blended learning. When people Google it, it comes up with quite a bit of different things. So this is one of the quotes that is pretty straightforward. The slide after this breaks down the three major pieces the way that Blended Learning Universe does. So there are three pieces is that there's a mix of online work and in-person work, that there's an element of personalization, and there's a flow between online work and in-person work. So what I would do is I would read that quote to them. I wouldn't hang out on that slide because it's wordy, there's a lot going on. I would come to this slide and either you break down what this means and give an example of it, or kind of have a back and forth and have this time as an opportunity to talk back and forth with your audience. So how do you know what a mix of online work and in-person work is? Is that taking a worksheet that I do every day and making it online? Not really. That's not really what it is. So kind of clearing those misconceptions at the same time as getting to know them. Then we're going to kind of transition. So this is so that they know the definition, because otherwise they're going to be wondering what it is, looking it up, distracted. But we don't want to really focus on this right now. What we want to do is we want to transition into how could I use this tomorrow in my lessons. So kind of giving them that idea of these are questions to help us figure out how we could incorporate elements of blended learning. We're not going to completely shift our curriculum. We don't even need to implement these elements today, tomorrow, until we make a plan. These questions are really just a guide. So there's two slides of questions. One of them is on inquiry. One of them is on personalization, because those are the two biggest, easiest ways that I see us dipping our toes into the blended learning water, shall I say. So these questions are kind of where we want to spend our time. If you have a group that has examples they want to share, I highly encourage you, let them share out. If they focus on inquiry the whole time and you run out of time, skip personalization. If inquiry is not working, go to personalization. If they don't have examples, share examples that you've done, that you've seen. You do not need to answer all of these questions. They do not need to answer all these questions. These are here to start thinking about how could I suggest a blended learning activity? How could I suggest how to make their curriculum a little bit more blended? So these are really just here for you to get to know and for them to start thinking about and seeing this is where I can see it. I don't need to change that much. I don't need to create a whole new idea. This is kind of, we're trying to get that buy-in, that motivation that's going to help us have that engagement, that's going to keep them coming back and putting into practice what we're talking about. We transition again on this slide. So this slide looks a little crazy on purpose. So these are all the terms, I got this from TeachThought, that come up when I think about blended learning. Depending on the school you're at, they might have used these terms before. They might have a really negative reaction to these terms, and that's okay, and it's good for you to know, and it's good for them to know, oh, I think blended learning is this thing, I really didn't like this thing, maybe I'm going to try a different thing this time, or maybe I need to change my mindset. So while we might be kind of ending on a negative note, it's nice to be like, okay, so you did mastery-based assessments and you had a really tough time with that. And so we're going to not do that. And maybe we're going to try a flipped classroom lesson and see how that feels. And can I use that to do something with? They don't have to commit to doing any of these. They might feel pigeonholed by these terms. That's okay. It's really good for you to know this before you start having them make blended learning lessons. And it's really good for them to think about all of these terms and that they don't necessarily have to fit into one of them, because in between your meetings, they're going to be Googling these things. They might be getting overwhelmed. There are things to think about. If people have had success with them, lean into it. Talk about how awesome self-directed learning was or station rotation was. But don't try not to focus on the negative, but you want to let people feel the negative. You want them to know that it's not always a positive experience, but this is why we're doing it. This is the positive things that I've had. And then I have the references from where I got those things on these slides. So as you go through and you plan out and you're thinking about the audience you have, if you want to, move to the wrong one, sorry. If you have different things that they've done there that you want to throw on here, go for it. If you want to throw on a slide at the end here that's like, this is something that I heard from somebody in your school, because maybe you've talked to them of a positive experience, so you have a positive experience to show them at the end, that's great. If you have different questions that you think would work there, or you're working with a specific department and you know an inquiry lesson they've done, you could personalize this question and ask them. So feel free to play with it. This is a good place to start, and just make sure that you are ready to share different things. Good luck.